What's going on, guys? I'm Tommy and I'm coming at you with an action figure review. Today I'm going to be reviewing Hasbro The Black Series First Edition Imperial Remnant AT-RT driver from The Mandalorian and Grogu. I really love the Shore Trooper design, which first showed up in Rogue One, a Star Wars story, back in 2016, and I'm really excited to see this helmet sculpt on one of my favorite vehicles in all of Star Wars, the AT-RT. Unfortunately, Black Series hasn't come out with an AT-RT yet, so I can't put this figure on one like I can with the Vintage Collection version. However, I am really excited that this character design exists. The first edition boxes have proven to be pretty difficult to find. As of the recording of this review, they're finally starting to pop up at Walmart, but they were supposed to start hitting stores at both Walmart and Target on Sunday, March 22nd, and lo and behold, they only showed up at Target locations. Not even all Target locations, just some of them on that day. I have someone to thank for getting me this particular figure, and that is none other than Scott Solo of Sarlacc Digest. Sarlacc Digest is a fantastic Star Wars focused channel. They have an awesome weekly show, and I am a co-host on their Toy Chest show, which takes place every Monday at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time. So Scott, thank you so much for thinking of me, especially because this figure was only single packed in the shipper where all the first edition figures are coming in, whereas most other figures are double packed, or in the case of the Mandalorian and Grogu Deluxe set, there's 8 of them to a shipper. So this being one of the rarer ones out of that shipper, I'm very happy I was able to get my hands on one to review for you today. So obviously, as I mentioned, the first edition releases for the mainline wave of Mando and Grogu Black Series figures are exclusive to in-store only purchasing at Walmart and Target locations in the US. This one, of course, coming from a Target location. As for the packaging, it is the standard style of packaging for the Black Series here in 2026 with a little bit of a twist. So rather than the black box that is the base for most Black Series boxes, we have a white box to help give that first edition look. On the front of the box, we have our Black Series logo, a big plastic window showing you the figure and his accessory. Over here, we have our first edition emblem in chrome, and it says first edition in about 1,000 different languages. We have the character name in vertical text here, as well as that he is number 3 in the Mandalorian and Grogu subline. Down below the window, we have a banner that is in the color for the Mandalorian and Grogu subline, as well as the name of the movie, and then down at the bottom, we have some logos and legalese. On this side of the box here, we have our mural art. We have a very vague background here. They're not giving anything away for the movie with this here, and we've got a nice image here with the name of the character down at the bottom. On the back of the box here, we've got some of the stuff we've already seen, like our Black Series logo, our mural image we saw on the side of the box, blown up a bit. We have our character name, and then we have just a generic bio for the movie in about 1,000 different languages. This bio reads, "The Mandalorian and his young apprentice, Grogu, embark on a thrilling adventure as they travel the galaxy." We reiterate here, he is number 3 in the Mandalorian and Grogu subline, and then down at the bottom we have all our legalese. Guys, please don't feed this action figure to your babies. On this side of the box, we have our wraparound window, wraparound banner, and the Black Series logo. Then at the bottom, we have even more legalese, and on the top, nothing. That about wraps it up for the packaging on this guy, so let's get him opened and we'll check him out. Alright, here is our figure out of the box. Before we take a look at the figure, let's of course take a look at his one accessory he comes with, that being a standard issue Imperial blaster pistol, the SE-14C. We have seen this blaster many a time in the years of the Black Series line. This one, however, is done on a really nice metallic, almost gunmetal looking finish, and the plastic looks great, gives a great shine, and it's got great sculpted detail, no painted detail or weathering on this blaster whatsoever. And that's it as far as accessories go, so now let's take a look at this brand new Trooper variant that we're going to see in the Mandalorian and Grogu movie. What I love about this Trooper design is that it marries one of my favorite Trooper designs out of the Imperial military, being the Shore Trooper, and it combines it with one of my, and here's something you may not know, one of my least favorite Imperial designs, being the Imperial Snow Trooper. What I think this does for me is really elevates that basic Snow Trooper design and really makes for a great little hodgepodge design that I think works really well. So let's start right off with the helmet here. Now, a blanket statement that I want to make about this figure as a whole is that what they've done, not just with this guy, but with several other of the Imperial Remnant figures you would have seen me review recently on the channel, is that Hasbro seems to have returned to a wash as the weathering, as opposed to the dot matrix digital printing that they've done for some time now. I think this is such a huge elevation for these figures. It really makes them feel a lot more premium. And not only that, I think the weathering also ends up looking a lot more natural, because that wash sits in the grooves and the crevices of the sculpt and makes it look a lot more authentic. All of the armor pieces seem to be on a little bit of an off-white, almost eggshell color, and that does a great job of keeping consistency with that weathering. These guys aren't stark white and shiny like they would have been in the glory days of the Galactic Empire. These guys have been wearing the same sets of armor for some time now, several years after the fall of the Empire, and they aren't getting any new gear anytime soon, so their armor is starting to degrade and deteriorate. Of course, at the head here, we have the Shore Trooper helmet, and I dare say this might be a new sculpt, mainly because the neck peg system is completely different from previous Shore Trooper releases. So this helmet looks great. We've got the basic black stripe that goes along the bottom of the visor on the top here. You can see there's a little bit of black paint on either side of that as well. Then we have our nice glossy black for the visor, and then at the chin filters down at the bottom and on the mouthpiece, we have lots of black painted detail over lots of sculpted detail there as well. I really like the aesthetics of the Shore Trooper helmet, and I think it fits right in with the Imperial military. As for the chest armor here, this is on a loose, pliable plastic overlay here. You can see all the familiar details of the Shore Trooper carapace. However, we have some black striping that's very weathered down on the top of the chest. That looks great. The strapping looks good as well. You can see we've got some great painted detail on the back of the figure with some gunmetal color as well as some red for all these little buttons and tick marks there. Once again, you can tell this is a nice pliable plastic, and we shouldn't have much issue with this hindering the articulation. As for the shoulder armor, this is the first piece you might recognize from the Snow Trooper getup here. These shoulder armor pieces are on a thin pliable plastic, and they are done on an O-ring system, so you can see that actually connects into the torso with the butterfly joint there. That should help us as well with not hindering the articulation. The sleeves are sculpted nicely. You can see they've got some nice wrinkles and folds in the fabric sculpt there, so that when the light catches it, it gives it a little bit of depth of texture. You can actually see that the gauntlets here are on their own little loose piece here, so those can move freely. You can see just some basic detail. Once again, these look very familiar to the Imperial Snow Trooper design, and you can see, I could say the same about the hands here. You've got some nice hand armor here that's sculpted nicely, again in that nice eggshell color, and then you can see he's got two trigger finger hands here. So maybe this is a foreshadowing to the fact that maybe we'll get one with a soft goods comma that also comes with an ATRT. Please, Hasbro, I'm really hoping. As for the torso here, this is going to be one separate piece from the belt and the comma, which seems to be a soft plastic overlay. The same can be said about that carapace there. We've got some nice line work here. You can see some different paint apps here with some dark gray as well as some lighter white there. That looks good. And around the back, there's not much to look at here other than the sculpt that matches the color of the comma. The Imperial belt is done really well. It's done in that nice off-white color with a gunmetal paint app in the belt buckle there. You can also see the belt has some nice white paint apps that go all the way around, showing off all those little boxes and things like that. He has a holster here, which seems to be a separate piece from the overlay for the belt and the comma there. That holster is in a very pliable plastic, and that's going to house the blaster nicely. And then on the left side here, we have a pouch, which just has some basic sculpted detail. As I mentioned before, the comma is in that thin, pliable plastic that we saw the overlays in. However, if they do a version of this guy on the ATRT, I would prefer if it was soft goods over the sculpted plastic. They did offer a cut that goes pretty far up the back of the comma here. That should help with articulation, but ultimately, I think when you have a comma that's this long, I think that the soft goods is the way to go, just because it doesn't hinder posing nearly as much as these overlays do. Moving the comma up though, we have again just basic sculpting for the legs here. You can see just the fabric that's sculpted in there, again with lots of wrinkles and folds. You can tell this is a very insulated costume made for cold weather. And then we have our knee armor here. Now, I was worried when I was checking this figure out that the knee armor was going to be fixed and be glued to the top of the leg here. However, it does seem to be a loose piece, so you can actually make it cover up the knee there. It doesn't seem to be fixed anywhere with that band, which does seem to be painted there, and that makes me very happy to see. That's going to make this figure a lot more fun to pose, especially with those knees bent. We're going to be able to have an accurate looking figure. And then down to the boots here, you can see we've got lots of strapping here again, and much more of a true stark white color here. Those look great. You can see lots of straps and buckles on the front here, and then on the top of the actual boot itself, you can see little laces and things like that sculpted in. They did also sculpt the outside of the tread, and overall, we've got a pretty nice looking figure here. I think for a new design that also stays very familiar to what we're used to with Imperial Trooper designs, they pulled this one off very nicely here. And I know the Vintage Collection already got an Imperial Remnant Snow Trooper figure, so I'm hoping that Black Series follows suit and they'll be able to use a lot of this tooling on this figure to create that other character. All right, let's now take a look at our AT-RT driver's articulation. I keep having to remind myself, it's not a Snow Trooper, it's not a Shore Trooper, it's an AT-RT driver. And I have to remind myself several times throughout this review, I've caught myself calling it the wrong thing. Hopefully none of those mess ups make it into the actual review. But with this being a new figure, this is going to have a lot of the new articulation schemes for the Black Series. So first thing I want to talk about is the articulation at the neck. So he's got a dumbbell joint. One ball joint goes into the top of the neck, one goes into the head. There's an additional ball joint at the base of the neck. So we're going to be able to get lots of range out of that. You can make our trooper look down a decent amount. He can look up just a little bit as well. You can get some good tilt side to side, as well as some good right and left. And then at the shoulders, you can see that here's the insert here for the butterfly joint, which is cleverly hidden in the torso. And you can get lots of good forward and back. Some really, really impressive range for this one here, as well as a hinge and swivel. So the hinge is going to get us to past that 90-degree mark, which looks great. And then, of course, we have a 360-degree swivel as well. That's great as well. You can move the shoulder armor separately from the arm, but if you're moving it the full range, just keep the shoulder armor with the arm so as not to stress that plastic on that O-ring system. We've got some single jointed elbows here, which have a pretty good bend well past that 90-degree mark, which is great, as well as a swivel at the top of the elbow. Then at the wrists here, we've got some ball jointed wrists, or roly-poly wrists as they're sometimes called. You can see these also have some great range, very omnidirectional, and I like the ball jointed wrists because they're not limited to one axis of movement like the hinge and swivel wrists are. Our AT-RT driver also has a ball joint about midway through the torso. That's going to give us some great added range, and it looks like he's also got an additional ball joint at the waist. So look at how much movement you can get out of that torso. That is another thing that makes me wonder if there's going to be a Black Series AT-RT with this guy later on. Just how articulated he is, him having very prominent double trigger finger hands. I'm not making any promises, but maybe I'm having some wishful thinking here. As for the hips, we do have another ball joint here, and you can see that you can actually splay the legs out pretty well, and that the comma pieces do move themselves out of the way for the most part. Of course, again though, like I said, I'm going to hold to I would prefer soft goods here. This guy does not have a thigh swivel cut, as many newer Black Series figures are omitting that, and they're giving you a modified hip joint, which is supposed to be able to emulate that motion. So you can get some decent in and out here. However, the out doesn't get you terribly too much range. I wish it was just a little bit more there. At the knees, if we lift up the comma once again, we have single jointed hinge and swivel. So you can see that the hinge gets you past that 90-degree mark, which is actually really nice. Once again, showing we can move that knee armor independently. We do also have a swivel at the top of the knee. Where we don't have thigh swivel, we do have boot swivel. So we have a boot swivel here on the figure, giving you some extra added range. And then, of course, at the ankles, we have our Hasbro classic, the forward-facing pin for rocker, as well as a hinge, which gets you some decent forward, as well as some decent back. So this is pretty typical for what you can expect for Black Series articulation here in 2026. And overall, it's a great looking figure. I really like this armor set. Just the visual appeal of it is enough for me, but it's great that it articulates well too. All right, guys, let's take a look at the accessory on the figure. So obviously, I think I'm going to display mine with the blaster pistol in hand. So here's how it looks in the holster. You're going to want to take the scope and put that outside of the holster. You can see that the barrel of the blaster does stick through the bottom of the holster, and that does pass the shake test, so you don't have to worry about that falling out when you're putting him on the shelf. As for the blaster in hand though, this guy is going to be able to fit that into his right hand nicely. It is a little bit difficult to get the trigger finger into the trigger guard, but it can technically sit in there. It's just a little bit of an odd fit. Here's a very basic blaster holding pose here posture for our trooper with the blaster outstretched. I think it looks great in hand, and this guy poses very naturally. If you really want to, it's great to get a little faux two-handed blaster holding pose with these guys, and I think this also looks great. You can also see I've got him in a bit of a wider stance here, and once again that knee armor is able to move itself down and cover up that knee joint very nicely. It's a very natural look. And here we've got our ATRT driver running to his ATRT mount, maybe to go track down a certain Mandalorian, but yeah, this guy looks great. He's got a great center of gravity, and it's really easy to get poses like this with this figure. But with that, guys, that's going to wrap it up for this review. This is a great new trooper variant to introduce into this movie. I think it looks great. I think the snow trooper armor and the shore trooper armor blend perfectly together and give off a great silhouette for this ATRT driver. I can't wait to see these guys in action in the new movie. But with that, guys, I hope you enjoyed this review. If you did and you're not yet subscribed, subscribe to Blitz Transmissions. I've got awesome Star Wars content coming out all the time. If you're an ARC trooper in my Patreon, you would have seen this review early. If you'd like access to early content, monthly giveaways, and other awesome benefits, the link to my Patreon is in the description below. Become an ARC trooper for just $4.99 a month. If you're a fan of the reviews I do here on YouTube, or you just want to support the YouTube channel more directly, you could also check out my YouTube channel membership, Rancor Battalion. For just 99 cents a month, it gives you access to exclusive badges, priority replies in my comment section, you get to vote on what I review next for the channel, just like the Patreon members do, and you get to check out all my reviews early here on YouTube. If you'd like some Blitz Transmissions swag, you could always head over to the Blitz Transmissions Armory over on Printify. Link to that is in the description below, as well as links to my Discord and all my social media. Guys, I hope you enjoyed this review. I'll catch you for the next one, and may the Force be with you.
Breaking off all units, fire at will. 1-2, pick a target. Too many, Captain. Watch your stabilizer, Gold 6. Anybody cover me. I got 2 vultures on my tail. You've got to hold them here. Watch your left. I can't shake them. I'm hit. I'm hit. Where's